Chapter 4. Millie had a dreamless sleep, but she did sleep through the night. At least, she thought she did. When she awoke, the room was pitch black. She did panic for a moment, not remembering where she was. Then it subsided as she started to think. She didn't know the time, and the barracks never had any windows, so she just stayed cuddled up in her blanket. She stayed like that for quite some time until she started to hear people whispering. Whispering turned to chatter, then the lights flipped on. They turned on like a warehouse, each set of lights turning on a split second after one another. "Oh, for fuck's sake," Gorge mumbled from his top bunk. Millie couldn't blame him. The light change had blinded her for a moment. Time to start day 2. "Hi, neighbor," Omar greeted. He sure got up quick. "Neighbor?" Gorge questioned groggily, still up top. Millie got out of bed. "This is Omar," Millie introduced, "and this is Gorge." "Friend of yours?" Gorge asked, peering over the bed. "Yes, he also knows Sly as well." "Well," Gorge jumped out of bed, "you can't have too many friends, right, kiddo?" Yeah, right, sir," Omar stammered. Millie just shrugged. "We can drop the sir," Gorge stated. "Understood," Omar replied. Gorge just rolled his eyes. They met up with Sly near the front of the barracks. Sly was talking with a couple others. He looked over to Millie and the rest, smiling. "Omar," he greeted. "Making some new friends?" "Trying, Chief," Omar admitted. Sly came over and threw his arms around Millie and Omar. "We're starting to become one big family." "So, what's going on?" Gorge asked. "We're going to get some family breakfast. But have you two met Kristen?" "Don't believe I've had the pleasure," Gorge replied. A tall lady with brown skin, orange eyes, and long brown hair came around a bunk. She had a couple inches on Gorge while wearing a white winter outfit. "And it is quite the pleasure to meet you as well, Gorge." "Millie." "Nice to meet you," Millie replied. Amon met up with the group as they left for the mess hall, followed by other groups from Team 6's barracks. Outside was freezing. The morning sky was cloudy, but at least it wasn't snowing. They arrived at a mess hall that was pretty packed with people, and that made Millie realize how large the place truly was. The place was bustling with people. Millie and the group got their meals, the same noodle concoction, and went to the same spot they convened at last time. They ate their meals while participating in some idle chit-chat, until Malcolm came up to the table. He wasn't in any military armor this time, just a black winter outfit. The outfit was still too nice to be mistaken for someone of equal footing as the rest. "How's it going, everybody?" Malcolm asked, and he got no response. "Hey, Sly, is it possible for you to get everybody in your group to the northwest courtyard around 2 o'clock? "How the hell am I supposed to keep track of the time?" Sly questioned. "Come on, man, let's not be difficult. I'm sure someone has a watch or timepiece," Malcolm suggested. "And what's this for?" Malcolm shrugged. "I'm not in the loop on that one." It was Sly's turn to sigh. "I guess no one has any other plans, so it shouldn't be too tough." Malcolm nodded. "Appreciate it," was all he said, and walked off. "He seems like a decent fellow," Kristen noted, "but what was that about?" "Maybe it's about getting some answers," Gorge suggested gloomily. They continued eating their meals with a bit of unease in the air. Unease was an understatement for Millie. She was scared of the unknown. She really didn't care what the future held when she was chucked out of that moving vehicle into the snow the other day. Meeting Gorge brought a little hope into her life, but meeting Omar, a friendly, relatable kid her age, brought her back to the present. This also brought back the fear of the unknown and what might happen to her. "Something got you down, Pinky?" Gorge asked casually. "How are you not nervous or afraid?" Millie asked. Gorge paused for a moment considering his answer. "I wouldn't say I'm not nervous or afraid, but I guess the best way to put it is that it's in the back of my mind, not the front. My life didn't care if I was afraid or nervous. It still happened." Gorge turned to Sly. "You get it, right, Sly? You're outlandy." Sly rose a brow. "No, sir. I barracks through and through," Sly admitted. He had grown up in the Empire. "And before you ask, I am new to this whole Bad Batch gang kind of thing." "Then what the hell did you do?" Gorge questioned with a bit of surprise. "Well, I used to be a carver, a wood carver," Sly enlightened. "A nice little gig. My community appreciated it." "That's," Gorge began to say. "Not what you meant," Sly finished. "And I understand that. I've done this conversation once or twice before. The short story is that I had a nephew maybe a year or two younger than Millie. Some old, high-up freak diplomat fancied him, and I'm sure you can connect the dots." Everyone was silent. Sly continued. What happened to my nephew was known within the local government, and it was even brought to the Baron's attention. The diplomat freak was very tight within the government and had a lot of friends. Would justice find her in our system? We will never truly know, but I felt like it would be a no on that. I killed the woman. No, murdered. In a very inhumane way. There was a very long silence and Millie shivered. And I'm here now, the quote-unquote leader of this ragtag group. I guess background doesn't really matter in some fields. The world is all the same, Gorge amended. Sly disagreed. Some of us deserve to be here. He turned to Millie. Some of us don't. Me and you are different. Bad things have happened to us, sure, but you haven't taken that misery and ruined someone else's life with it. But didn't that lady deserve what she got? Millie blurted out. In my opinion, yes. Yes, she did, Sly replied. Let me be clear. I do not regret my choice one bit, even if I don't see my family again. Then who cares if you ruined the lady's life? Omar jumped in. Sly was silent for a moment, then asked, who said I was talking about the diplomat? I didn't ruin her life. I ended it, Sly stated in a matter of fact. But what about the woman's family? What was traveling around about my nephew was merely rumors in their eyes. No hard evidence was ever presented to convict the woman at the time. In theory, the diplomat died innocent. I don't understand, Omar admitted. You killed her because she did a bad thing. So how is she innocent? Sly kicked up his feet and leaned back. The complications of human society, my friend. Gorge gave a belly laugh, while Omar was still left confused. The world's complicated and uneasy, Kristen chimed in. You'll probably not understand it when you're older either. I know I haven't, Gorge added. I'll say cheers to that, Sly joked. But again, Millie, going back to your question about fear, I've already retaliated at the world for my nephew's misfortune. Thus, it's the world's turn to come back at me. Getting here is the first step, so I accept what comes next. I still don't think I understand your point, Millie said. My words are my words, Sly replied. It's up to the individual to make sense of them or not. What kind of poetic garbage is that? Gorge protested. Sly winked. It's my poetic garbage. They finished their meals and headed back to the barracks. Sly laid out the plan to everybody there, and, after some discussion, everybody seemed on board. Kristen? Millie asked after the meeting concluded. Kristen smiled. What is it, sweetie? Is there a shower in this place? I've heard of a place near the clothing building, Kristen replied. Do you think you can come with me? Of course. A girl needs to freshen up every once in a while. Freshen up, Gorge said with a bit of outrage. In this environment? In this scenario, Gorge, Kristen chided. It's a figure of speech. She turned to Millie. We might as well go now. I know it's been quite a while for myself when it comes to a shower. We'll meet the rest of you at the meeting spot or what have you. Millie nodded in agreeance, and they left. The shower building was connected to the central tower. The building itself looked to be the same size as the barracks. There seemed to be a couple of people having an argument about something. Two guys were harassing three women that were blocking the entrance. Millie recognized the woman leading the group as Illis. Listen to me, one of the guys were saying. We're all adults here. Let us just get in there and get what we need. I don't see why Hammerburst needs to take up the whole shower for his personal playroom. He has his barracks for that. The other guy laughed at that. One of the women looked like she was about to pounce and end the man then and there, but Illis rose a hand to stop her. Illis smiled at the man. Of course, we could fight about it. I do have a reputation for getting my hands dirty. The man's face paled slightly, but continued. Oh, come on, babe. We all know you wouldn't get away with that. Illis took one step forward, a warm smile, but daggers in her eyes. The man and his companion took 2 steps back. Yet I stand here after I dispatched some gentlemen on that path we took to get in here, she countered with a twisted smile. She pulled out the same sharp rock she had before. It was stained with old blood, yet she still licked it with glee. So, babe, let's go. The man shook his head. Oh, fuck this, he muttered, and the two walked away while passing Millie and Kristen. Illis nodded and grinning at Millie as they approached. What was that about? Millie asked. Illis didn't fail to freak her out. We make a simple demand like the women get the showers for like an hour or so, and they get so pissy about it, one of the women complained. Illis just sighed in acknowledgement. She seemed tired. So, can we go in? Kristen asked. It's not Hammerburst's domain, is it? That pig? Illis asked as her devilish smile returned. It would be a good excuse to kill him. Millie got the chills. But yes, you can go in, Illis finished. It's actually quite nice. the other woman chimed in. Well, thanks for the good work, Kristen said. A more friendly smile crossed Illis's face. Much obliged, she replied. Kristen and Millie entered one huge room as if it was like stepping into another world. The entire floor was tile, with shower heads scattered around the ceiling. Best of all, the heads sprouted hot water, which created a nice veil of steam throughout the room. I can see the gentleman's point, Kristen commented. I would fight the purple-haired girl for this. That was something Millie would not want to see. There were benches lined across the wall to either side of the entrance, with clothes scattered here and there. Millie set her clothes on an open spot of the bench, and went to the far end where a metal cabinet was. She opened it and found a collection of soaps and shampoos, with an assortment of other products. Kristen? They have some soaps here, Millie said with disbelief. Kristen walked up behind her. That's unsettling. Millie turned to her with confusion. Why? Why have such a luxury as soap for us? Kristen questioned. Better yet, why have the hot water and a civilized shower, but give us freezing quarters and rations for food? I think the food is civilized. With no one to cook it, it's the next best thing, Millie pointed out. Fair view, Kristen replied, but not even close to agreeing with her. But for a moment, this scenario makes you feel like a normal person instead of a prisoner. Millie agreed that she felt the familiarity of home when the steam hit her skin, but Kirsten's words also brought her back to the reality of the mess she was in. Even so, she would enjoy this moment. She grabbed some soaps and got to work. She walked under an unused shower, and it immediately started to douse her with hot water. She jumped with fright and almost slipped until Kristen caught her. Kristen chuckled and went towards another shower head. The shampoo got rid of all the grime in Millie's hair, turning it into her more natural pink. She was able to get the dirt off her body and the crusted grime out of her eyes. After what felt like an hour or so, she felt as good as new. She went to a puddle to look at her reflection. She tried to tame her hair with her hands, trying to make it a bit more presentable. Kristen came over, taking a seat on the bench nearby. She was looking rejuvenated. She suggested that they should wait for a little while until they were completely dry, or as dry as they could with the steam, so they wouldn't die of hyperthermia. Some time passed. Millie and Kristen got dressed, leaving the showers a few moments later. Illis and the other women were still standing by the door. Illis nodded, and Millie asked, "How long are you going to be here?" Illis shrugged. "Not too much longer. You were one of the last to show up, so we'll probably move on in a couple." It was a thoughtful answer. Maybe Illis did have a different side to her, Millie thought. Millie said her goodbye and Illis just nodded. Kristen suggested that they go to the meetup spot, since they really didn't know what time it was. They got to the building that was pressed to the large outer wall of the ward. The wall casted a huge shadow on the building and the surrounding area. No one was there. That sent a nervous chill down Millie's spine. Did they miss everybody? Kristen assured Millie that they were just early, and that they should just head inside the building. The door was unlocked, and Millie couldn't object. The building was about half the size of the barracks in almost any other building they've been in. Millie stopped dead in her tracks, and Kristen almost ran into her. The room was filled with a huge variety of weapons from wall to wall, from guns to blades, and some devices that Millie didn't know what they were. "Oh, lordy," Kristen whispered, and Millie thought that was an understatement. She was never really comfortable with weapons and was never a fan of violence. "What do you think?" Kristen continued. "Do we pick something out?" "You said we were early?" Millie asked, and Kristen nodded. "Then I guess we should wait?" Kristen nodded and added, "Well, I'm not waiting outside." Millie agreed and took a seat up against the wall by the door. Kristen spent the time looking around. They apparently weren't that early, because 10 minutes later, the door opened and almost slammed into Millie. She jumped out of the way at the last moment, and people started to pour in. She recognized them as people from her team. "Ah," came a familiar voice. "I told Sly you'd find your way here, and..." Millie turned to face Gorge as he trailed off. "The shower turned out well for you," he finished. "What is that supposed to mean?" Millie asked, a bit objectified. "Well, you're more colorful, Pinky," he teased. He looked around, taking in the surroundings for the first time. The armory was like a busy shop now. Most people looked way more enthusiastic than Millie was feeling. Before Millie could say something, Gorge asked, "Ever gone shooting before?" Millie hadn't. "Not really something common folk have an interest in within the Empire," Millie replied. Gorge nodded. "I guess that's fair." There was a moment of silence as Gorge was thinking. "What about gridlock, though? That's still a popular sport." Gridlock is a combat sport where two teams will compete to either take out the opposing team's commander or to just capture the opposing team's base. Each player would be outfitted with weapons suited to a real-life battle scenario. Bullets are replaced with a modified projectile that when it hits a target, it explodes and crystallizes the point of impact, leaving the area paralyzed while sending the target a jolt of pain. The sport is idolized in the Empire, just like American football for the United States or football for Europe. Millie shrugged. Not really something I watched, she answered. Yourself? Not really something that was really available in my area, Gorge replied sincerely. Oh, sorry. Millie apologized, feeling a bit embarrassed not thinking of Gorge's past. Ha! No worries, Gorge replied. Living in the Outlands really isn't too bad of an experience. Your life is dictated by your choices, which I can appreciate. Amen to that, someone shouted. You two understand we don't have all day here, Kristen pointed out as she approached. She looked like she had a semi-automatic rifle slung over her shoulder, with a handgun attached to her thigh. I don't even know the combat scenario, Gorge countered. I'm sure that excuse went well in the Outlands, Kristen shot back. Okay, lady, Gorge replied annoyed, but ultimately conceded. Come on, Pinky. I'm more concerned about finding something that works for you. What about you? Millie asked. Like I said before, I'm easy. If it goes bang bang, it works for me, he said with a huge grin. They pushed past people, looking at different weapons like it was a shopping trip. I guess finding something with less kickback would be good, Gorge was explaining. You've never shot before, so most rifles would be out of the question, especially automatics. Well, maybe a sub might work. He shook his head, not liking the suggestion. Nah, the recoil would get ya. I guess a semi-rifle might work, or, of course, there's always a pistol. As he walked, he slung a rifle over his shoulder and took a small, compact shotgun. Your thoughts, Pinky? She walked towards a section that had some tech that she had never seen before. Experimental? Gorge questioned as he read the sign. He turned to a guy next to him. Has anyone picked any of this up? Fuck no, the guy replied. This isn't the time to be trying something new. Gorge shrugged, kind of agreeing with his point. What about this? Millie asked, picking up a long rifle that looked old as hell, but somehow felt new. Gorge replied, looking over the weapon. 1. I have no clue what the hell this is. The barrel looks pretty big, like you could shoot a handball out of it. Gorge took the rifle and pulled down the stock, and the chamber decompressed. And this must be the reloading chamber, I guess? You can fit smaller balls in here? I'll take it, Millie said with a bit of enthusiasm, slinging it over her shoulder. Well, there are things to consider here, Gorge tried to protest. The guy said it isn't time to be trying new things, but everything here is new to me, Millie countered. I mean, the gun is relatively light, but you'd probably be carrying an ammo box for this, which would be heavy, Gorge also pointed out. Won't you have to carry a lot of ammo for 2 guns? Millie countered once more, looking at the rifle and shotgun Gorge had. Well, 1, I can definitely carry more weight than you, and 2, this was my setup for these kinds of things. So, I'm used to it, Gorge pointed out. But sure, I'm sure there's a niche for what you got. Let's at least get you a knife or something. I thought knives weren't used much in an actual gunfight, Millie asked. Don't bring a knife to a gunfight and all that. It's true that you don't really use a knife in a fight, Gorge agreed. You're in a very dicey situation if it comes to that, but it doesn't hurt to have one. It's light and reliable. They went over to the blades to see the options. Gorge picked one up. What the fuck? The blade was glossed in a strange, light-colored liquid. Pretty strange, huh? Sly asked, standing by them. Maybe we aren't going to kill each other after all. Killing each other. That was a horrifying thought that hadn't crossed Millie's mind yet. What are you going with, Sly? Gorge asked. Sly pulled out 2 sickles and smiled. These are what I'm most comfortable with, Sly explained. And? Gorge pressed, expecting more. Well, I'll probably carry a couple knives with me. That's it? Gorge asked incredulously, and Sly nodded. For humanity's sake, what's wrong with you? You're worse than Pinky, and you have experience with this kind of stuff. Hey, don't count me out for bringing the essentials and looking good in a fight, Sly defended. And besides, I haven't been in a war. Okay, buddy, Gorge growled. Sly shrugged. Not everybody can be this talented, and Gorge just rolled his eyes. And what's that you got there, Millie? Sly continued. Some sort of portable cannon? I'm not 100% sure, Millie replied. Well, I can appreciate the ingenuity of it. Ingenuity, Gorge commented with doubt. But at least take a dagger with you, Sly recommended, passing a small dagger to her. Millie took it. Without anyone noticing, a piece of the back wall slid away and a screen appeared which lit to life. A man staring far too close to the camera was in view. He smiled with satisfaction and leaned back in his chair. He looked like a man in his late 30s with olive skin. His eyes had a nice sapphire color that went well with the white glasses. He also had some shiny, jet black hair with a ton of product in it. Hello, ladies and gentlemen of all ages, sadly, the jet black-haired man added with a tone of regret. I'm Dr. Glad, medical expert and weapon engineer. He looked down to consult his notes. And you're what? Group 9? 6? 32? He paused, considering. 6 it is. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure I'll get to be introduced to each and every one of you, but we do have to get things rolling. Take the next couple of minutes to adjust yourselves and, when you think you're ready, exit the building and head to your left and around the corner. Head through the open gate and we will get to the activity. Until then, ciao. The screen turned black and the wall moved back to its original spot. Well, that was pretty, neat, I guess, Gorge commented. Okay, Sly announced to everyone. Let's do as the man says. No sense twiddling our thumbs here. And they all moseyed out of the armory and followed Dr. Glad's instructions. A 10 by 20 foot opening had appeared in the towering wall, and, as a group, they walked on through with Sly, Millie, and Gorge leading the way. They walked out of the freezing shadow and into the daylight that blinded Millie. It seemed like it was going to be a clear day for once. They were on a path outside the east wall of the ward. The path led to another building with the same doctor standing in front of the entrance. The building itself had a balcony around its perimeter, with armed guards scattered around. Dr. Glad smiled and waved at them. Hello there, he cheered as they approached. Now, let's make this quick. We are killing daylight after all. And he laughed like a maniac. What the hell's going on? One member of the group asked. All will be explained as you enter the facility, the doctor assured. At least, the important stuff, he added. Now, your group will be entering this left side over here. He gestured to the opening to the left side of the building. I do want to check your gear as you enter, just out of curiosity. And the doctor wiggled his finger. No funny business. We don't want to upset the guards, now do we? Sly was up first and, just like the doctor said, inspected him, nodded, and told him he was all good. Gorge was the same, although Gorge waited at the entrance for Millie since she was next. It took 1 second for the doctor to look at Millie, and he cheered, Phenomenal! Exhilarating! Which made Millie take a step back in nervous surprise. A pioneer in warfare. No, Millie stammered in confusion. One of our unique weapons. The doctor was ecstatic. And in the hands of an inspiring young girl, he added. Marvelous! I must ask, do you know how it works? Millie shook her head, wanting this conversation to be over. It felt like all eyes were on her, and she could tell Gorge was smiling at her with a devilish grin. Not a problemo, the doctor announced. The weapon is designed to fire blunt, spherical rounds that cripple the target. It'll weaken the structure of any armor, and if you hit an unprotected part of somebody, well, they won't be too happy. You'll find a special grade of ammo just for you. He patted her on the back. Best of luck. Auf Wiedersehen. And he moved on to the next person. Millie joined Gorge, who still had that ridiculous smile. Stop looking at me like that, she protested. You're popular, he replied. What does off whatever mean? Gorge shrugged. None of my concern. They journeyed down a long tunnel and entered a room that had benches scattered around, with Sly sitting on one of them. Took the scenic route, I see, Sly joked. The doctor couldn't get enough of me, Gorge replied. He spent way more time with me, though. Isn't that what took up most of our time? Millie asked, and Sly started to laugh. You can't just undermine me like that, Gorge chided. Well, Sly started, trying to contain his laughter. We're back to playing the waiting game. He motioned to a side wall. There's quite the variety of ammo and a bunch of handheld explosives at the end. Not like you're gonna need any of that, Gorge noted in an annoyed tone. Hey, your leader will shine, Sly countered as more people from the team entered. Right. Gorge turned to Millie. Let's see if we can't find that box the good doctor was talking about. Millie nodded and they went to the wall. It took a minute, but they found a box of balls that were the size of large marbles. Gorge picked one up and examined it. I guess this is the closest thing we're gonna get. Millie picked up one of the balls and began to load it into her rifle. I wouldn't do that, Gorge advised. I don't think there's a safety on that. We'll figure it out when we get out of here. Do you mean how the rifle itself works, or how to shoot? Gorge frowned for a moment in confusion and shrugged. We'll figure it out. Figure what out? Omar asked as he popped up behind Millie. What are you working with, kid? Gorge asked. Aman gave me some special tips and we picked this for me. Omar held a small, compact submachine gun. It's small and light, so it should be a good fit for me. That's a pretty neat idea, Gorge admitted. Hope the kickback won't be too bad. It has a burst fire mode, Omar answered. Don't underestimate your weapon, Gorge advised. It's definitely not a toy. As he said that, it made him think, what were they actually shooting? He left Millie and Omar to their idle chit-chat and made his way to Sly. Hey, Gorge said in a more serious tone, do you know what we're getting ourselves into? Sly shrugged. A firefight, most likely. Right, but a fatal one? You checked the ammo, right? Yeah. What are your thoughts? You're the one with the expertise, Gorge. 2 thoughts are better than 1, but the bullets look and feel real to me. I don't think the kids understand what's about to happen. Gorge sounded worried. Well, maybe they do. Sly pulled out his sickle. Do you know what this gel stuff is? He asked, talking about the residue on the blade. Not even close, Gorge admitted. He knew all the blades here had that residue on them, though. Well, I cut one of our guys' arms with it, Sly replied, and Gorge rose a brow. Hey, it was consensual, but the blade wouldn't go deep, maybe a centimeter or less into the skin. This is some experiment, Gorge noted. Right, but his arm is completely unresponsive. I made the cut to his forearm and his entire arm went completely limp in seconds. Okay, so not designed to be fatal, Gorge concluded. Is that just your blade? Sly rose a brow, and Gorge took that as a sign to take out his blade. He knew already it had the same material on it. Same material, same effect. At least, he hoped. So, maybe not a fatal exercise? What's the ammo that Millie is carrying like? They feel like lead balls. Sly nodded. We'll have her take a practice shot when we get out. I'm sure no one will have a problem with that. Gorge nodded as well. If the round makes a hole in the wall, then they would be in trouble. If not, then it'll be a relief to Gorge. Won't the guards have a problem with that? I don't think so, Sly replied. They seem to be content with us doing our thing, as long as that doesn't involve us shooting at them. Gorge nodded, believing his words. So, what's the plan? Aman asked as he approached the two. Kristen was by his side. Millie and Omar joined the group as well. Gorge looked at Aman and saw what he was carrying for a weapon. That's one big-ass gun, Gorge noted. A big gun for a big man, Aman replied. How much rounds can that thing hold? Enough, Aman assured. More than enough, Sly added. But we're going to have to wait for them to let us through these doors before we can really come up with something. How's everyone feeling? Everyone seemed more or less okay. Millie, however, was not. She had overheard a couple words of Gorge and Sly's conversation as she was talking to Omar. Live rounds was something she wasn't super thrilled about as she rubbed one of her ammo balls in her hand. She had talked to Omar and he was 100% treating this like a game. She wished she could live in that ignorance. Sly's words about killing each other when he was inspecting that weird liquid on the blade back in the armory echoed through Millie's mind. The group went through some small chit-chat, with other members coming up and asking Sly questions. 15 minutes later, the doors opened automatically and everyone walked through. Snow crunched under Millie's feet, and they were once again outside. The clouds had come back once again. They were in a square arena that was easily the length and width of 4 football fields pressed together in a square. Crates were scattered throughout the field and, at times, stacked on top of each other, creating structures that went up to 30 feet tall. There were stands surrounding the arena with onlookers scattered here and there. Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, a loudspeaker throughout the arena played. The good Dr. Glad here to announce the next groups and to go over some housekeeping. We have groups 2 and 6 here on this fine hour. Now, the rules are simple. First team to eliminate the enemy's commander will be crowned the winner. Anything goes, but fatalities and crippling injury are a no-no. When the match is over, you'll hear this sound. A loud alarm shrieked across the arena, which made Millie flinch. All actions stop at this point. If you continue attacking others, you will be shot by our wonderful guards keeping watch. You have 10 minutes of discussion, and please do not leave your starting area. Do Wazinya. And the loudspeaker switched off. And there we go, everybody, Sly announced to the team. But let's kick this off with our star teammate Millie firing the opening shot with her crazy gadget. All eyes went to Millie, and she suddenly became the star of the show. What? she said nervously. You were the only one the doctor paid any attention to, Gorge whispered in Millie's ear. Why? The unique gun, Gorge answered. Now let's try it out on that wall over there. I'm sure no one will mind, he assured. Millie unslung her rifle and took one of her ammo balls out of her pouch. She opened a slot and loaded it into the rifle. It looks like it can hold about 3 in here, she noted. Well, at least this thing might have a use, Gorge acknowledged. Millie pushed the slot back into place and the rifle made a sound that probably had to do with air compression. She looked up at Sly and the rest of the group expectantly. Sly shrugged. Go ahead. Millie rose the rifle at a wall that was about 25 meters away and fired. She was nervous and didn't even aim. She didn't even really bother to think how she was holding the rifle. The rifle kicked back with an unexpected force. She could feel part of the stock hit and graze the right side of her ribs, while at the same time the recoil made her lose her footing. She gave a little cry as she fell back into the snow, but no one seemed to care about that. She heard Gorge let out a huge sigh of relief. Sly walked over and slapped him on the back in good cheer. Millie got up and winced at the pain in her side, but she was able to see the work she did, and she was, well, she didn't know how she felt. A mixture of shock, relief, and fear maybe. The shot had covered a good portion of the wall in a reddish paint substance. There was also a nice dent at the point of impact, although the dent was way larger than any shot she fired, or so she thought. So the ball expands in the barrel to create more devastation, Kristen noted. Although, we will have to work on your shooting, Missy. She helped Millie out of the snow, who was more embarrassed than in pain at the moment about the whole thing. No trouble. No one was really paying attention to you. More attention was on the bullet than anything. Well, that makes me feel better, Millie said sarcastically. Kristen laughed. I don't think I asked you this, but have you ever shot before? What do you think? Millie shot back, still feeling irritated. Gorge didn't give you any pointers? Nope. I had other things on my mind, Gorge defended as he approached, but I do apologize for that, Pinky. You good? Just a little pain in my side and I guess my hands, Millie told him. Your side? Gorge asked with a bit of concern, but played it off. I'll give you some pointers later. Some father figure you are, Gorge, Kristen remarked. Father figure, Gorge yelped. I'm 23. Kristen rose a brow. Bullshit. Sly jumped in between them. Sorry to ruin this exchange, but we do have a minute or two to make some plan happen. He turned to Millie and gave her a smile. Good shot, though, Millie. He turned back to the group. Okay, so I believe we should have all of our corners covered. So we'll be dividing into 3 groups. Kristen will lead a group to the left side, Kristen nodded, and Gorge will lead a group to the right. Me? Gorge protested. And I'll take center, Sly finished. Hey, isn't the game lost if you get shot? A younger man asked. A good leader takes the risk head-on with his men, Sly replied. And I'll also have faster reflexes to adjust our strategy if I see what's happening first. Wait, if that's your point, then how are you going to communicate with us? Kristen pointed out. Sly waved his hand. Details, was his response. Okay, I want all of you to group up with the people you trust the most. Then we'll divide you between the 3. Sly turned to Gorge and Kristen. I feel like Omar and Millie should be in the middle with me. I also want Amon. Millie just looked back and forth between Gorge and Sly. Why? Gorge asked. The bottom line, Sly began. I feel like it's the safest spot. Amon is also the best man to give me covering fire. Okay, fine, I guess, Gorge replied, understanding that they didn't have time for an argument. Divide the group and I'll head right. He looked Millie dead on. Stay safe, Pinky. And he went off. Amon! Sly yelled. Best of luck, everybody, Kristen said and walked away. Sly went through and divided the group in less than a minute. He then went up to Millie. Just a quick tip. And he showed Millie a proper technique to hold the rifle that wouldn't break her ribs when she shot. Also, stick to 1 bullet instead of 3. Before she could respond, the buzzer went off and the match began. It was Sly, Millie, Amon, Omar, and 2 other men who were brothers going down the middle. Sly thought it would be a good idea if the other 2 squads had more numbers. His smaller group would hopefully be less of a target. It took them a minute to cover the ground to the midpoint of the arena. There was no sign of their competition, and not a sound from the opposing side. Well, this isn't fun, Sly muttered. But where are they? Millie stammered. Could be snoozing, Sly suggested. You don't honestly believe that, do you? One of the other men, Roger, asked. A man can dream. Our other sides are pushing through, Omar noted. Then so will we, Sly replied. An ambush is inevitable. Keep an eye above. They all nodded and pushed forward. The crates became more congested and the corners became tighter. They probably had about 5 meters of breathing space from side to side. You starting to regret this plan? Omar asked nervously. I'm regretting you calling this a plan, Sly countered. Just then, an explosion came from the distance to the right side. A moment later, gunfire rang to the distant left. Sly rose a hand that meant stop, and the group did just that. Amon, the other brother, Connor, whispered. Amon sturdied his rifle. Yeah, I see it. Well, do something about it, Sly chimed in. On cue, Amon swung his machine gun aiming to the top of a stack of crates to their left and opened fire. The individual he was firing on moved like a phantom and breached their lines in a flash. They swept Amon's legs from under him and he collapsed. The individual rose a revolver and shot Amon square in the face, turning his head into a crystal. All of this played out before Millie or anyone else could comprehend what happened. A bald, scarred rogue stood before them with stormy gray eyes. Shit! Roger was about to say before a kick cracked his face and he went down. Using the momentum of the kick, the rogue twirled on one foot, sweeping Omar and Connor. Sly went for a tackle, hoping to catch them off balance. Instead, they grabbed Sly in midair and guided him over and into some crates. In the air, Sly dropped what looked like a rock. The rogue wasn't taking any chances and moved away. Millie rose her rifle, seeing an opportunity, but the rogue was fast. They twirled around and sent a kick to Millie's wounded side before she could do anything. There was a loud crack and pain shot through Millie. Her vision turned white and she collapsed. Omar got to his feet and rose his submachine gun, giving Sly the distraction he needed. The rogue turned to Omar in anticipation and Sly threw a knife. The rogue rose a hand towards the knife without looking. When the knife was a couple centimeters from their hand, the hilt exploded, crystallizing the rogue's left arm and part of their face. Omar opened fire and the rogue did a backward somersault, disappearing in the midst of the chaos. Did I get him? Omar asked excitedly. We have other things to worry about, Sly replied, getting to his feet. He went to Millie, seeing the damage. She was extremely pale, but her eyes flickered open. She wasn't in shock, so nothing life-threatening, Sly thought. Roger had a bloody face, but was overall conscious and fine. Amon was a different story. After a quick analyze, Sly believed his friend was fine. He was breathing normally, but wouldn't respond to anything. He wasn't going anywhere. Sly gave a deep breath. Okay. Omar, I need you to stay with Millie and Amon. Watch over them. The brothers and I will go on ahead. Millie rose to her feet, which was a shock to Sly. I'm coming with you, she croaked. Tough girl, Sly thought, but he knew she wasn't going to be doing much. I don't think I'm going anywhere, sir, the bloodied brother said. I'm not seeing straight. Also, that thug seemed like a real killer and could still be out there, Connor chimed in. If they show up again, we can take him while watching over Amon. Sly sighed. I guess we're fucked to begin with, he noted. We run into literally one person and this is what happens? Let's hope the rest of their group isn't psychos. He took a moment to gather his thoughts and sighed. Fine. Sounds like a plan. He addressed Millie. You're welcome to follow if you keep up. Millie nodded. Omar, let's get going then. Sly turned back. And let's keep an eye out. They moved through the area without any issues. The sound of explosions and gunfire echoed in the distance. Millie kept about half a dozen meters behind Sly and Omar. Then they came to a small clearing like the one they started in. There was at least a dozen or more enemies in front of them. But they were just relaxing. Some resting up against walls or just lying on the ground, staring at the sky without a care in the world. And, standing in front of Sly and the gang was the enemy commander, Philip Marsh. He was an 80-something man and the oldest Millie had seen here by far. He smiled with perfect white teeth at the approaching group. He scanned them with his golden yellow eyes. Quite a show you're making, Marsh stated in a confident but cheerful voice. Sly rose a brow. What's your game? My name's Philip Marsh, he stated, and I'm not one for games to be, quite honest. He gestured to his fellow teammates. Hence my squad's attitude to the whole situation. Not all of your squad, Sly countered. Yes, Marsh admitted. Some have that good old fighting bug. I assume you ran into Rogue? How are they doing? I can't confirm how they're doing, Sly answered, but they're a real pain in the ass. Philip nodded in understanding. So, what now? Sly asked. Well, we fight, apparently, Marsh replied. And by we, I mean you and I. Marsh pulled out a staff from under his robe and extended it. A duel, if you may. Sly frowned. You have the numbers. Why not just slaughter? Millie shivered at that, still trying to keep balance on her 2 feet. Well, if you insist, Marsh said disappointedly. Not insist, Sly clarified. Just asking. Well, a duel just seems more enjoyable. Just hand-to-hand combat? Marsh shrugged. Whatever we have. In the end, there's really no rules in war. Sly nodded, believing enough had been said. Let's get started. He twirled his sickles and rushed for the first strike. Omar leaned over to Millie. Should we just leave him be? How about how you doing, Millie? Or want to go find a place to rest, Millie? She managed to say weakly with annoyance. So that's a yes? Omar asked, and Millie's stare shot daggers into his soul. Okay, I'm only kidding, he said defensively as he went to Millie's side, offering his shoulder for support. Other side, dummy, she said with a bit more of a playful tone. Yes, ma'am. They moved up to a crate and took a seat. They watched Sly's fight and realized with a bit of surprise that Old Man Marsh was holding his own. Marsh was fast, parrying Sly's strikes, but overall playing a defensive game. Whenever Sly would latch onto the staff of his sickles and try to yank it away, Marsh would go with the momentum, flipping around and over Sly, creating an opening to land a blow or two on the younger man. Marsh had a clear advantage in the fight already with his longer-reaching weapon. To top it off, his defenses and reflexes were remarkable. It made Millie forget the man was over 80 years old, yet he was keeping up and, from the looks of it, beating Sly. The fight kept the same pace, with Sly launching a fury of blows and one or two of those touching skin. While every opening Sly presented, he received 2 or 3 blows back. After another exchange of blows, Marsh lowered his guard, seeming to be exhausted, but smiled. Sly saw the opportunity and tried to go for blows to the neck, but winced, giving a cry in pain. His body locked up and he was paralyzed on the spot. Marsh took a step back, raising his staff. He smacked the end of it like he was hammering in a nail, and that nail hammered into Sly's forehead, sending him flying back and off the ground. He crashed on the ground and his sickles impaled the ground next to him. A loud alarm shrieked across the arena and the match was over. What just happened? Omar asked in disbelief. Marsh rose a brow and pointed to his staff. Millie could see there was little pricks like a cactus scattered all over the weapon. That girl seems to have noticed, Marsh said. The pricks in the staff have a similar substance to the knives, and such that are used here. The more force I apply to these blows, the deeper the pricks will go on the given strike. Easy for it to pierce like clothing, while not enough to pierce the gloves that I wear. He walked over to where Sly was laying. The outcome was inevitable. Wonderful, Sly muttered, still able to keep one eye open. Ha! Marsh barked. You have my respect, Sly. I'm impressed you're still conscious. I have a thick skull, Sly replied in a bit of a hoarse tone. Till next time, Marsh said with a smile, and he took his leave. Ladies and gentlemen, this match is over, Dr. Glad announced for the speakers of the arena. Leave the unconscious and anyone who can't move. My gorgeous medical staff will be taking care of them and patching them up good as new. Any minor wounds will be patched up at a later date. Au revoir. Sly rose a hand while still laying on the ground. We're staying put, he muttered. I think I'm in worse shape than you, Millie thought. How are you feeling? Omar asked Millie. Not moving seems to do the trick, she quietly replied, although she was still as pale as a ghost. What the? Gorge asked as he arrived at the scene with his squad. A duel, Omar said as if that was enough of an explanation. Of honor, Sly added weakly. You're kidding, Gorge said with disbelief. No, sir, Omar replied. A duel? What is this, 1650? Gorge was struck with untold disbelief. Shall we have a duel, my good sir? He mocked in a rich, snobbish accent. Unfucking believable. And here I thought we actually won. My mistake. It was tactical, Sly defended while staring at the sky. Gorge waved a hand, done with the conversation. He then got a closer look at Millie, and he just realized that she was as pale as the snow. Oh, shit, he muttered as he went over to her. The rifle started this, Millie started. And? Gorge asked impatiently. We ran into a person and they did a number on us, Omar continued. They kicked Millie's side and, well, yeah. So, we're dealing with a set of broken ribs? Gorge asked. Millie just slowly shrugged. Either way, we'll make sure she's as good as new, Dr. Glad said as he approached with a guard flanking him on either side. He looked down at Sly for just a moment. You seem non-life-threatening. If that means, are you fine? Then yeah, I'm fine, Doc, Sly replied, annoyed. Tremendous! He turned to Millie. I have quite the list of people to get to, but I can start with you, my go-getter. Glad gave Millie a blinding smile and 2 thumbs up. Gorge sighed. Okay, we'll see if we can get you patched up, Pinky. Dr. Glad held up a hand. This will be just a doctor-patient checkup. Glad turned to one of the guards. A stretcher, please. The guard stood there, not moving a muscle. Oh, don't give me that look, Lieutenant. Even though the guard's face was covered with a helmet. You're just gonna let the girl walk all the way to my lab? Animal! The guard made a motion with his hand and someone brought a stretcher within moments. Millie looked at Gorge. I'll be fine, she said, and she tried to fake a smile, but it didn't work out. As if I have much of a choice, Gorge grumbled. Hold up, Doc, Sly protested, getting to his feet. What about my man who got shot in the head? The guards are coming around to remove the crystallization, the doctor answered. They will feel a bit of discomfort for a while, but will overall be fine. The guards loaded Millie onto the stretcher. But I'll take my leave now. Nakamin. And he walked off with Millie in tow. Millie couldn't help resting her eyes as they went to the doctor's lab, and she soon fell unconscious.